Welcome to Velocity, the Vista Chamber podcast. I'm your host, Chamber CEO Rachel Beld, and it's my privilege to interview the movers, shakers, and change makers impacting the Vista community and beyond. Today, I'm joined by Don Stump, CEO of Lifeline Community Services. Don has more than 35 years of experience working with nonprofit organizations that serve youth and families in San Diego County. He holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and anthropology from Texas Tech University and a master's in counseling psychology from Boston College. He also holds a postgraduate degree in chemical dependency treatment from Boston University. Since joining Lifeline Community Services as executive director in 2007, Don's accomplishments have included strategy development, community engagement, collaborative leadership, rebranding, and diversifying sources of support for the organization. Under his tenure, he's tripled Lifeline's annual budget and expanded services to include transitional housing for former foster youth and critical outreach and comprehensive intervention for victims of human trafficking. He served as the president of North County's regional collaborative, the Alliance for Regional Solutions, and now chairs the affiliated North County CEO Alliance. Don has been co-chair of North County's region's Live Well San Diego leadership team. He's also a graduate of Stanford University's executive program in nonprofit leadership, Lead San Diego, Cal State San Marcos's Leadership North County, and Fieldstone Foundation's executive leadership program. Additionally, Don has served for 9 years on the board of directors for True Care, one of our local community clinics in the region. He's also won a slew of awards, which I will include in the show notes, but I did want to mention that he was recognized by the San Diego Business Journal of one of San Diego's 500 most influential business leaders 3 times. Thank you for joining us, Don. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
The first thing, I kind of want to jump in and just learn a little bit about you. So okay. I know you went to Texas Tech. So did you grow up in Texas?
I did grow up in Texas.
Okay, so tell me, where'd you grow up and how did you get turned on to like psychology, anthropology, and your field of study?
Awesome. So born and raised in Texas in Amarillo, grew up in Houston and Galveston, went to Texas Tech University, and then I applied for graduate school in a variety of different places, but I decided to go to Boston College to get my master's degree in counseling. And, I think, the stories and the theories are, we're definitely people who sort of gravitate toward human services are really compulsive helpers like I am, or secondly, really looking to understand and solve problems and try and figure out why things are happening. So I ended up thinking I was going to be a therapist, and I did my second-year internship with a juvenile diversion program in Suffolk County. And actually, no, it was Norfolk County in the Boston area, and have never turned back from sort of working in community and in nonprofits as opposed to hanging out a shingle and doing therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was there a specific patient or person that really spoke to you when you were doing that second-year internship? Was there a specific experience that kind of let you know, this is it, this is where I fit? I know oftentimes we're looking for purpose in our work.
Yes.
Is that where you found it? How did you know?
Yes. It was definitely very much about purpose. I think the original thoughts were, I'll hang out a shingle, I'll be a therapist, I'll charge $200 an hour, and I'll do well in life. And then I did this second-year internship with juvenile diversion programs, and it was really a flashlight on a part of life that I had not experienced before. I had grown up 12 years of Catholic school, Jesuit education, private school, and had been in very quiet places like Lubbock, Texas. And then all of a sudden I'm working really in a very low-income urban city environment working with kids. And I got that first understanding, and it really is an understanding about how many disadvantages and how many obstacles have been placed in their way that were not placed in my way because of sort of the privilege of my upbringing. And I really decided that I could see and feel the way the relationship with the young kids referred by court with a caring adult, somebody that wanted to help them navigate their problems and help them seek the support from their parents and from the community. And I just after that, I never turned back. I did that internship. I was immediately hired by a settlement house in Dorchester, Boston, doing probably the best first job any social worker or therapist could get. I was working doing court diversion, I was doing juvenile diversion, and then I was doing clinical work with mostly boys and their families who were sort of 8, 9, 10, all the way through high school. And it offered me the opportunity to really experience people who didn't have the easy access to resources to get change, and really being that resource and connecting them and getting them hooked up in voc tech schools and helping them find pathways that were really going to help them succeed. And they were very different from my own, and I was completely engaged at that point.
So it sounds like you really helped them find their own purpose too.
Yes.
Right, which is really valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mentioned earlier that I got a Jesuit education in high school, and one of the mottos was of Jesuit education is about creating men for others, I have stayed in contact with my, I actually just went to my 40th reunion a couple of years ago, and I remember one of my colleagues who had known me all the way through grade school and high school and Catholic schools, and he said, "Gee, Don, you really bought all that Men for Others stuff."
Yeah.
And I went, "Yeah, I really did.
Yeah.
I bought in big time." And the thing I was proud of from that education was many of my peers were doctor, lawyer, businessmen, well-to-do, oil and energy and careers in Texas, but they were all involved on boards and community service and engaged in their community in different ways. And I think that sort of focus on Men for Others really impacted me, and I think it impacted a lot of us that went through that education.
Wow, that's cool. What a cool story. That's nice. Well, so how did you then end up in California?
At Boston College, I met a beautiful woman who offered me the opportunity. Once we decided to get married, we were really looking at having kids, and she said, "I really want to go back to California and raise kids near my family." And so we moved out here and have been here now for 35 years.
Okay.
And I pretty quickly, I started doing direct clinical work, but pretty quickly moved into management and nonprofit sector. And I worked for the YMCA Youth and Family Services. I worked for San Diego Youth Services for a good long time, and then Say San Diego for a good long time. So, and then here at Lifeline.
And you've been at Lifeline 16 years?
16 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me, for those listening, hi Mom, who are listening and don't know about Lifeline, what is Lifeline and who does it serve?
Lifeline's mission is to help build self-reliance among children, youth, and families through really strong quality services and community-based services. And so that really is our roots. We were founded here in Vista. Both community residents and city staff really saw a changing need and a changing trend in Vista in the late 60s, early 70s, and said, we need to create an organization that can help youth in a way where they might be getting into trouble, but they need some resources. And the proud thing 50 years later, because we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, is that we're still doing those same type of youth services, but just a whole lot more now.
Yeah. Well, they were programs that were needed and impactful. And it's interesting to think about, just before we started recording, you and I were talking about how quickly the world is changing.
Yes.
But that's so interesting that Lifeline hasn't left behind previous programs, previous methodologies. Those things work.
They do.
Intervention, stepping in, helping, catching those youth at a key moment in their life is really impactful. And that's been core to the Lifeline mission this whole time.
Yes, I agree. And I think, one of our core values at Lifeline is prevention and early intervention. And so when I'm looking at growth in programs, what I'm really looking at is how far upstream we can get with youth to see if we can divert them from law enforcement systems, from the child welfare system, from gang activity, so that we can get them engaged in that positive path before the real difficulties happen. And so the juvenile diversion program that I worked at in Norfolk County in Boston is very similar to the juvenile diversion program Lifeline still operates here. And I have to say that, I'm in that fun, about to retire place, and I'm thinking back on my 38-year career. I'm thinking back on my 16 years with Lifeline. And in the last 25 years, through the sort of institution of those juvenile diversion programs and really developing a prevention and early intervention approach in this county, in San Diego County, we have totally turned around what's happened in terms of troubled youth.
Wow.
I can say, it started in the 70s, but when we really started collecting data and in San Diego started making that change, which was sort of in the late 90s, the focus was on probably, I want to say, up to 8,000 kids that were on probation and in juvenile lockup in 5 different facilities. And through this collaboration of providers countywide that do this work, we're down to like 800 kids on probation and in juvenile lockup.
That's amazing.
And it's come from looking at the system of kids getting in trouble and it's like a freeway, and just trying to find off-ramps that are different places where we can get them off that path toward jail. Because a young person, that if they end up in juvenile hall, it becomes an experience that they survive, and it becomes an experience that now becomes desensitized to them. And what we really want to do is we don't want them to start thinking of themselves as a criminal, and we don't want them to start thinking of themselves as somebody that can be in lockup and survive that.
Right.
We want to divert them off that highway at any point that we can get. And it's happening. And so by San Diego County investing in early intervention and prevention through funds from the state and from probation department and then partners like Lifeline, we've been able in North County to divert hundreds and thousands of kids.
That's amazing.
And I will tell you, one of my favorite stories is going to Vons. And every once in a while, I'll be wearing my Lifeline pin or a Lifeline hat or a Lifeline T-shirt. And I can't tell you how many, mostly moms, sometimes moms and dads, that I run into in Vons that say, "Oh, Lifeline, I remember when my child was in trouble at school and you guys were really there for them and we were able to really come together and turn that thing around."
What a great feeling.
I know. And so Vons is my favorite place to go. I pick up flowers for my wife or something for work, and hoping I will run into a Vista resident that had a good experience.
Yeah. Well, how are the youth referred to Lifeline? How do you find them?
Well, the joy of being here for 50 years is we're pretty well known in the sort of grassroots neighborhood and community network.
Okay.
And then, our partnership with the city and other community organizations, we're pretty well known. But we do have very formal relationships and MOUs with the school district.
Okay.
So we do get kids referred who are in trouble at school and need diverting. And then we also do high-level behavioral health work. And we have contracts with school districts. And we provide the bulk of the funding through Medi-Cal billing.
Okay.
And then we have other dollars that come from the county that help us serve the uninsured. But once again, it's this prevention and early intervention approach. It was originally called EPSDT, Early Periodic Screening, Diagnosis, and Treatment. And it was trying to identify kids with behavioral health problems in elementary and middle school before those behavioral health problems became serious, became chronic, and started impeding their ability to stay in school. Yeah. So outcomes in all of Lifeline's youth programs, we want them to stay out of the criminal justice system.
Right.
We want them to stay in school, and we want to increase connectivity with family, because we know that kids where parents are involved in their life, parents are involved in their school life, that is an indicator of success that they're going to move on.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of your partners, school district and the juvenile system. Who are some of your other partners, maybe programmatic partners, but also supporters?
Yeah. So, fun thing, back to Lifeline's sort of core values. We've talked about prevention and early intervention. The second one is collaboration. So, through my thoughts and leadership and through the behavior of our staff, we try and build collaborations and we try to leverage partnerships, because you have to have that psychology as an organization that we can't solve this whole problem on our own.
Right.
We can't, as a nonprofit and a service provider, go, my little program is going to solve everything that's going on with this family. So having partnerships with Operation Hope and Interfaith Community Services, who deal with homelessness. Lifeline, we deal with sort of teen and adult homelessness, but we don't have anything for that larger family homelessness or for anything for folks that are really looking for shelter and housing on a given day. And so having those partnerships just in time for foster youth as a partner in our drop-in center that we have over near our campus in Vista, and it's basically saying, how can we make those partnerships and develop those relationships that are going to create better outcomes for our clients? Because at the end of the day, it's not about us as an organization and did we do it and did we fix this and what's our story. It's really about what's the client's story. Did we change it for them? And is there a partnership, a relationship, another service that we can leverage to get a better outcome for them?
That makes sense. And it makes sense, too, because if you're dealing with a client and their family, oftentimes this situation that's come up has other things that feed into it. Maybe there's food insecurity. Maybe there's a financial situation where they're at risk for homelessness, or there's someone in the family member who's battling a mental illness and that's impacting the family. Or maybe I don't know if you work with any veteran families at all. Yeah. So there's a lot of things outside of this situation that create the situation that need to be addressed. And I think that's wise that you realize this is what we do best. Yeah. And we need these other folks to bring their resources so that to address the entirety of the problem.
Yeah. It's sort of the difference in our thinking at Lifeline. Most of our programs are what I would call sort of problem or clinically based.
Okay.
Where a behavioral health issue has arisen, they've been arrested, they were in the child welfare system, they're a foster kid. Yeah. So these things where the system sort of refers them in, but exactly to your saying, those are not the core problems.
Those are
the symptoms of what has happened in this family's environment. And so that's partly why I say when we work with youth, everything also has to have that cafeteria of family services around it, because we can work clinically with the kid on their anxiety or depression issue. We can work with them on choices around criminal behavior and negative behavior and things that they've chosen to do, substance abuse. But none of those things will sustain.
Right.
As they're a minor, they're living in their parents' home, they're living in a life where they're a dependent. So how do we create access to parenting groups and family counseling and parenting education where we can go into the home and do it to make it more accessible to the parents? But anything that we can do to strengthen that family life, and some of it then again is economic, as you also mentioned. Right. Then we have the clinicians dealing with the clinical issue, and then we really have to build a strong case manager system because we know that those causative factors tend to be poverty, risk of homelessness. If you look at a kid that gets into trouble at school or by law enforcement, 50% of the time you're going to find either a single or a dual working family where the parents are working so hard that they are not completely tuned into what's going on with their kid. They're not able to provide the supervision that they would like to their kid. But the economic factors, I have to keep rent. I have to keep food on the table.
I have to work 3 jobs to pay the bills, so I can't be home with you making sure you're not getting into trouble. But that's when there's referrals to other organizations like the Boys and Girls Club or other places where you can make those connections. What about kiddos? So, I'm a mom. I have a teenage daughter. I have a 9-year-old son. And among my peer group, mental health among tweens and teens is one of the main things that we all talk about is how are we making sure our kids are okay? And we're all engaged parents. We all work and we have lives, but we're engaged parents and we're watching for trouble. What about those kiddos? Do you serve those kiddos too?
Absolutely.
That maybe aren't necessarily being referred to you by the school district, but their parents just have concerns around mental health, or maybe they're looking up, you get an alert on your phone that your kid looked up something on, there's apps where you can track their texts, and you got a text that they looked up something that's scary, right? Yeah. And you're worried about them. Is that something that you do as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the benefit of those, what we call school-based behavioral health programs and contracts that we have with the county is we can also take kids referred, self-referred or parent referred, other than just from that school. We have a certain latitude to stretch outside of that.
Okay.
And, another one of those reflections of, sort of the old guy about to retire is that I can remember in all my nonprofit work, to talk about a former foster kid or a kid in the child welfare system, or for the last 12 years talking about young people that have gotten involved in human trafficking, have been recruited and mistreated in that way. Those have been things that it's been easier to make a case and to fundraise for. It's been very difficult up until probably the last 5 years to make a case that youth and their behavioral health needs, both the mental health, depression, anxiety, defiant behavior, and then their substance abuse and substance use, it was like no one wanted to fund that at all, other than government or Medi-Cal or things where the system was paying for it. And I think we all just lived through this pandemic.
Yep.
And for the first time in many people's lives, that youth mental health issue, because of where kids were during the pandemic, isolated at their home, tied to technology as opposed to human beings, which is what a teenager craves the most, is not parents, but that social environment with my peers.
They're stepping away from the parent unit and establishing their independence among their peer group.
And so they got locked down for 3 years. Some of them as short as one, but I think now parents, individuals, philanthropists, a whole variety of people have seen the impact of mental health and behavioral health issues right in front of their face with their own kids.
Right.
And they're basically saying, what are we going to do about this? And I'm like,
red flag.
We've been here.
You're like, hello, we knew. Right.
We knew. And once again, per Lifeline's philosophy, most kids are struggling with what I would call walking wounded issues. They have sociological and interpersonal things happening in their life that lead to depression and anxiety and things where we can do counseling. But many young people, we want to get them before that first break of psychosis, because if they're not addressed well in the system, if they are not educated and get resources quickly enough, then they really end up in that chronically mentally ill population where it's difficult for them to stay in school, and then it becomes difficult for them to stay in a job, and then it changes everything. And 3 steps down the line, you're homeless. And what we found with former foster kids is that they didn't have the support systems in place. They turn 18.
And then you're on your own.
You're on your own, and they don't have the support system in place. And next thing you know, most former foster kids are homeless within 2 to 4 years.
A lot of trouble. Yeah, gosh. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that it's a robust approach.
Yes.
And that you're trying to touch all the different facets of that population. Yeah. Obviously, like you said, that extreme case all the way to that early intervention and tapping into the family resources and all of that. That's great. What's your favorite part of your work? What's the best thing about it?
We've really created a diverse sort of ecosystem out there. And I think the human service nonprofit community is part of that ecosystem. And when And when I see right now in particular that people are, for once, sort of reducing stigma and acknowledging mental health and substance abuse issues and how they affect youth and adults, it's been very gratifying because these are things that we've been trying to overcome stigma about forever because, the typical family dynamic that creates dysfunction is sort of the lack of acknowledgement and the lack of addressing critical family problems. And sometimes those are behavioral health problems. And what they tend to do is lead to really poor communication, poor engagement, poor parenting style. And next thing you know, you're down the road. So right. I think getting this buy-in and awareness that it's really okay to talk about it. The biggest challenge right now is that you got to keep moving forward. So it's a fast-paced environment. There's no rest for this. But at the same time, there's how do we create spaces, and I'm having to deal with this work-wise too, but not just in our personal life, but in our work life, where we manage our stress, we manage those things that impact us in our personal life that'll affect us in our work life, and still keep moving forward with all the productivity and the things that we need to be doing. So.
Yeah. Well, I asked you the best thing and you shared it. And I was going to ask you what's hard, but it sounds like that's what's hard.
Yeah.
Is really that balance. And because the work that you do is so impactful, and I would think that it would be heavy.
Yes.
Like what you carry is heavy.
At J&R Auto Body and Paint, you don't have to worry about a thing. From minor dents and dings to major collision repair, we offer a worry, hassle-free experience with superior customer service. Our auto claim advisors work directly with your insurance company, so you don't have to deal with the headaches. Our certified technicians work on all makes and models to get your repair done right the first time. We stand behind our work with a lifetime warranty. Locally and family owned, J&R Auto Body is here to serve the community. Call us today at 760-724-4923.
Hi, it's Carrie from Solitude Home in Vista, California. If you're looking for ways to brighten and cool your home, we are your natural light and fresh air experts. We offer a selection of daylighting and ventilation products to help make your home beautiful and comfortable. And the best part of all is you won't be using any electricity to brighten up. We can bring beautiful, natural light into those dark spaces in your home, transforming them into beautifully lit spaces in less than 2 hours. No mess, no fuss, just amazing natural light to make your home look and feel great. If you're looking to cool off your home, we have a complete line of ventilation products to keep your home and garage cool. We want to make cooling and refreshing your home easier and more energy efficient than ever with our line of whole house fans, solar attic fans, and garage fans. Our certified installers carry the full line of Solitude daylighting and ventilation products on their vans at all times. Installation can usually be done in about 2 hours. No messy drywall, paint repair, structural changes, or re-roofing needed. It's pretty much the easiest home improvement project you'll ever take on. At Solitude Home, we offer no obligation appointments throughout Southern California. Visit our website at solitudehome.com or stop by our showroom conveniently located in Vista at 2210 Oak Ridge Drive, or give us a call, 619-375-1629. We look forward to brightening your day.
For more than 60 years, Tri-City Medical Center has been committed to advancing the health and wellness of the community we serve. With leading-edge emergency care, including top-rated heart and stroke programs, advanced orthopedics, primary care, obstetrics, and neonatal care, Tri-City stands at the ready when you need us most. Learn more at tricitymed.org.
How do you separate and be with your family and be fully engaged and we're friends online. I know you build sandcastles and how do you separate and not carry the weight of this work with you?
Well, to fast forward, I'm definitely moving into retirement, feeling gratified about the accomplishments of the work we've all done together. But at the same time, it does take a toll. And I think me sort of self-monitoring and saying, 38 years, I remember my wife said to me, she goes, in sort of a teasing voice, she said, 38 years, that's a good amount of time for the work you've done. I think that's enough. You know, I remember she said that's enough. And so will I still keep helping in the future? Yeah. And, but I think that 38 years of not only carrying the individual things that happen to clients and worried about them and their safety. But then, you know, of course, I'm the CEO of a $16 million organization, and I got to make payroll twice a month, and we've got to sustain and comply with contracts, and we have the weird political winds that are affecting the work that we do, and it's an unrelenting, never-ending sort of stress stew. And so, you know, you've seen my meditation sandcastles at the beach, and we all have to sort of figure out ways to sustain ourselves through these sort of difficulties. I will say one of the unique things about working in a clinically focused nonprofit organization is that we have a good understanding of the role of clinical supervision, about oversight of people that do clinical work, about, you know, when I do an orientation with my staff, I talk to them about trusting their instincts and their boundaries, because I need you to show up for work tomorrow to deal with the next client and the next challenge and the next thing that's going to happen. And if we're sandbagging ourselves with challenges, and not releasing that frustration that we're feeling with system, or we're sitting alone with the story that the client has told me, and by doing group and individual clinical supervision, we get that out of them and help them process it out there in the world, then that person is better able to suit up and show up the next day, because you know what? Those 4 clients they saw on Thursday, they're going to see 5 on Friday, and they need to be their best person. So, you know, I only hope for some of our other systems, you know, child welfare system, law enforcement agents, and a variety of levels. I really wish that they could have the same level of attention that we do to sort of clinical supervision and self-care in the behavioral health field, because you know, also in that orientation, I tell my staff, we are inherently placing you at risk. You are going to be working with families entrenched in gang activity. You're going to be doing home visits in low-income neighborhoods. There's child abuse. There's been family violence. There's been human trafficking in these situations. We're asking you to interact with and absorb and manage very challenging situations. So I really feel like we've done a good job of trying to create those supports and self-care that we need, because I need you to show up tomorrow. And not be burnt out.
So I know they're recruiting for a new CEO. So is stress stew on the recruitment brochure? Is that on the brochure? I don't think so.
I don't think so. But I think it's inherent in the job. You know, somebody asked me the other day, they said, do you feel the same sort of stress your people do? Because you don't work with clients, actually. And I said, yeah, I don't work with clients, but I know the stories. And I'm hoping for the next leader of Lifeline that they're equally as in touch and engaged with our direct service folk who are doing this sort of work, because you need to know these stories. You need to feel these stories, because that's the energy that gets me up, negotiating contracts, fundraising, doing political advocacy for policy issues, the things that my job, I've got to know those stories. And then the other thing, any person applying to be a CEO, they know they're going to be stressed, because we have good people at Lifeline. They solve a lot of problems with clients and then with sort of personal issues. But if a problem ends up on my desk, it's usually a doozy. And and it's usually something where I have to dig deep and figure out what really happened and what's happening, and what are the individual solutions and what are some of the systemic solutions that we might reach out to. But yeah, it's going to be a big challenge, and I'm retiring at an interesting time. We were talking about it earlier that the workforce and the workplace is rapidly changing right now, and I am starting to feel a little bit like an old dog. I'm sort of end of the baby boomers generation where we were trained to. I don't know, suck it up, soldier, and the choice to retire was really me making a mental mind shift from that hardworking nonprofit martyr that was going to work until I died to solve problems to somebody really saying, is 38 years enough, and have I done enough, and is it time to start thinking about me? But the workplace and that changing workforce environment, it's really about very much of paying attention to the workforce and the needs of the workforce. And they're young and they have different ideas and different beliefs than I do. And do I have the bandwidth, and can I pivot and make another radical change? And I'm doing it right now, but retirement, I know that next leader of Lifeline is going to have to be a different kind of human manager, human resource manager, because it's a different world out there.
It really is. I immediately thought of this example. I went to back to school night, my daughter's middle school, and you rotate classes and you meet all the teachers, and quite a few, young teachers. My husband's been a teacher for over 20 years, and we were at this back to school night, and pretty much every single teacher, especially the ones who were newer to the field, said, this is my email, and I will answer email between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. I will not answer email after 4 p.m. or on the weekends. So if you email me, that's when I'll write you back. And I don't know if someone told them to say this, but I looked at my husband and I said, good for them. Yeah. Good for them. I would have never thought to say, I only answer my email, at these times. I mean, like during COVID, I ended up having to make myself turn my phone off so I wouldn't answer calls at midnight from businesses calling me really upset about what's happening. So I have to give it to this next group of leaders that they have boundaries and they know what's important to them and they know where to draw those lines. They can do hard things, but then they also know how to stop and to turn it off. And I'm envious of that. I'm jealous of that skill, and I'm working on that for myself as well. I know I went on a vacation this summer. We went to a place that had no cell service. Yay. I turned off my phone for a week, and it was amazing. It was amazing, and it's great. So I think you're right on the money with that. So speaking of your next leader, which is yet to be found, what else is next for Lifeline? Programmatically, what's next for the organization do you see in the future? Because you're always evolving, right?
Yes. Well, and as we stated earlier, the cool thing is that we've sustained those sort of core youth development and youth problem-solving services that we were founded on in 69 and 73 and that we're still doing today. But we have brought on new programs and new services. And back to behavioral health, the biggest growth that we've had in the last 5 or 6 years has been in the behavioral health environment. And I think the awareness of the need to address those issues, and then secondly, looking at the funding mechanism, which in the past, most of that counseling happened through cash fee-for-service for those who had the cash to do it, or through the health insurance system. And so Lifeline, part of our last 5 to 10 years, we made the strategic decision in 2012 that we were doubling down on behavioral health. The demands of being able to bill healthcare force you, it's a driver, an organizational driver. It forces you to develop expensive systems to make sure that there's quality assurance in the work that you do, that there's quality outcomes tracked, that you can dot all your I's and cross all your T's, or they'll disallow payment on services. And so we've had to build this robust system, and we either needed to step away from behavioral health and not deal with that, or we needed to figure out how to double down and build that system. So we went from $800,000 to $6 million in behavioral health services that we're providing not only in North County, but countywide. And so I think for the future of Lifeline, what we've done is we've built an infrastructure that becomes scalable.
Hey, that's good. That's a good thing.
So we can do more types of intervention, maybe even residential interventions, where we provide really in-depth clinical services, and then build healthcare directly for those things. So I feel good that I'm handing off to the next leader a really 90% prepared organization for that next wave of that growth in behavioral health, because we've gone from 800,000 to 6 million. I think there's a whole lot more opportunity, and through that, more people will get help.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I know in your tenure, Lifeline has grown significantly, not just in behavioral health. I think tripled the budget since you've been there.
Yes, we
crazy.
went from 5.2 million in 2008 to 2007 to we're just past a $16.4 million budget.
Amazing. A couple hundred employees, like
160 employees. Okay. Probably 140 to 150 volunteers at any given basis. We still rely heavily on volunteers to do EITC tax preparation in the spring, winter and spring. We have mentors and tutors that work in our after-school programs at Oceanside. We have a robust clinical intern program where we have MSW and MFT trainees from universities that are in that second year of their internship, some MSW in the first year.
Little baby Dons, ready to learn and dive in.
And I would say, for the future, one of the biggest challenges that we're facing is the universe is not creating enough clinical level MSW, MFT, moving to LCSW, LMFT, in the community. That any young person that has an interest in being a helper, I say to them, hang in there, find a way and get that MSW or MFT degree, and then move into licensure, because big healthcare, the community clinic system like True Care and Vista Community Clinic here locally, they have high demand for not only licensed therapists, but also for psychiatrists with medical degrees. There's a huge lack in that area. So the behavioral health field is a growing field, and we need more, and they're driving salary. The demands of the workforce are driving the salary rather than us now.
Yeah. And
it's really, they can make their own ticket.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a party coming up in October.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Tell us the scoop on the big shindig.
So October 21st at the Seabird in Oceanside, we're going to be celebrating 50 years of Lifeline. We've got some history and stories to tell, and some interviews with older folks. We're also we'll talk again also about the what's Lifeline ready for in the future. And then when even though my board knew for 3 years, but when it went public with my retirement, we decided to make the event also a little bit of parting ways with Don after 16 years with Lifeline. So we'll celebrate both.
You deserve a party, for sure. You've done a lot for this organization and for North County, for the county overall. So awesome. Are tickets still available?
Yes, tickets are still available.
Okay. It's in Oceanside, the Seabird?
It's in Oceanside, Seabird, October 21st at 5:30.
Okay. And people can get info on that on your website?
On the website.
Okay, which I'll link it in the notes. I'll put a link in the notes. Okay. All right. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you want to mention? Anything I didn't ask you that's important to you?
Well, I know two things. One is another sort of thing happening that I see Lifeline moving in the future is that we have started Project Life in response to really the community need to provide intervention services for victims of human trafficking.
Okay.
And we're quietly one of the largest service providers in the county. We've had to keep relatively quiet about it because really the threat to staff from traffickers, we're out there helping and we don't want to engage with the legal side of trafficking. We want to engage with our lane and the freeway, which is doing intervention and helping recovery for those that have been victims of trafficking. And all I can say is there is so much demand, so much more to do, and really finding a way to grow that program and increase sort of the comprehensiveness of our services. We do need to really think about sheltering and housing for that population. It's a very slow recovery because the trauma is so deep that creating change and creating self-sufficiency is difficult because there are so many triggers that the trafficker has created in their lives about what harm may come to them or their family if they step out of line. So really, there's a lot more work to be done, and I'm really hoping that we can find ways to, buy an apartment complex. And we've had a great deal of difficulty because that's such an in-demand commodity, but we really need to provide more housing, both emergency and transitional housing for victims of trafficking. And we need to do more work with young people under the age of 18 in that area as well.
Okay. How can the community get involved with Lifeline, either in the programs that you're just mentioned or anything else that we've talked about? Is there opportunities for the community at large to get involved?
Absolutely. As I said earlier, we rely heavily on volunteers, 160 staff, probably 150 volunteers at any given time. So if
with
you go...
all different skill sets.
All different skill sets.
Okay.
So we have
you don't have to
volunteers that weekly pick up food from grocery stores and put them in our food pantry that we distribute to clients. We have volunteers that do tutoring and mentoring in our after-school programs. We have clinical interns. We have admin people that are working in our accounting department that are helping us put together databases and reports for the board. So there's all sorts of volunteer opportunities. Okay. And then the fundraising event or the anniversary event is really emerging a little bit as a fundraising event. We've never done that really at Lifeline. So encouraging people to go on the website, look at ways that they can give, either participate in the event or just give to Lifeline to help support one of our initiatives.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so that's the end of our official conversation, but I always have a few last minute questions that I want to ask each guest.
Okay.
I love reading. I love book recommendations. So tell me a book that is important to you or a book that you think people should read.
Well, I'm a big reader, and so it's
That's a hard question.
It's a hard question for me because there's so many. However, there's a book that I've actually noticed I've read 3 times in the last probably 5 to 10 years, and that book was called Boys on the Boat. Okay. And it's the story, I believe it was the 1932 or 36 Olympics, but for me, I love the powerful underdog sports story. Yeah. And it's a group of working class young men who go to college at University of Washington and somehow become this rowing team. And as a rower myself, I had that knowledge and that understanding of teamwork that you learn in rowing and how one individual, what's right for me in this situation doesn't work on a boat when there are 8 guys rowing and you all need to be in sync. And then the powerful sort of how their working class status and who they were competing against in this very elite Ivy League sport. And then they were basically ended up rowing at Olympics and really showed what American kind of, we can do it. We are the underdog. We will win this. And it just was a powerful story. So I've read it 3 times recently, and I think I go back to it because I need that inspiration. A
little pep talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. That's great. Okay. Tell me a song you have. What's your jam? A song that moves you.
Well, I'm an old timer, and so I tend to listen to a lot of old music. I do have sort of my young people, my two kids. I heard a lot of sort of 90s and 2000s music that I grew up with them with. But because of this reflection place I'm in at the end of my working life, I was thinking the other day about the Beatles and the long and winding road. And I think that phrase sticks with me because it's right now feeling very much like a long and winding road. Mm-hmm. And I think the lyrics of that song are about a relationship, and that relationship of ending up back where I started, back where this relationship began, and that you're still a consistent thing, which I can say very much about my spouse and my wife, Sarah. It's been part of that. But I think another part of it is, I've told you a little bit about, when you end up in a helping profession, you kind of become this martyr to service and martyr to helping and doing for the good of others, and your own self sort of steps back. And so part of me has been thinking that long and winding road is really ending me up back with myself and trying to figure out, what's it about me? What do I want to do in this sort of last era of my life that isn't really solely about service and relationship and raising kids, but it's really about what am I going to do for me?
Yeah.
And so that's been a fun place to end up at.
Wow, great answer. We got deep there.
Okay.
That's good. That's good, and I love it. And also just the wind, like what's around the bend for you? Like what's, it's great to think about those things. And I'm a huge Beatles fan.
Yes.
Huge Beatles fan, so I love anything Beatles.
Yeah.
Okay. What is something that inspires you?
Things are hard right now. And I frequently tell my staff in emails and in person, thank you for getting up today and putting on your pants from Target and focusing and doing this work. It inspires me that people are thinking about themselves, but they're also thinking about the community, and they care enough to be helpers. They're the people that help. And I'm inspired by the people that work for me because I'm inspired because they want to help.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that one. Okay. Last question. Tell me a Vista business that deserves a shout out and why.
Oh. There are so many, but on a very simple basis, curbside has been my jam, as you put it, ever since it was one of the first places I had lunch here. I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed prospective board members, how many times I've met with board members there. I've even met with a handful of donors there. I've asked people for money in curbside, and it feels like an extension of Lifeline's campus. It feels like home. The staff I know, there's something solid and consistent about curbside.
Yeah.
And then the soup is excellent.
Yeah.
So,
well, I had lunch with you there
yes,
at least once, maybe more, and you gave me some really great advice at curbside. So
awesome.
So I almost wondered if you were going to say that. Don, I want to just say thank you so much for joining me today. I think that having this conversation really highlights what's possible when people connect their purpose and their passion.
Yeah.
And so thank you for sharing with me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to our guest today, Don Stump, and thank you for listening to Velocity. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and tell a friend. Help us move Vista forward with Velocity. The Vista Chamber is a nonprofit organization. Find us online at vistachamber.org.